Welcome back to Coming Together. This is Bradley Narragon, and today I'm very excited. I've got Marie Poland here with me in the studio. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
Marie is, I was just thinking last night that we've known each other for half my life, for 23 years now. That's pretty exciting.
I love that. I love that's half your life. Yes. Yeah. Woo, 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 woo.
So a longtime friend, and Marie's done a lot of exciting things in her life. And what I'm excited to have her share some of her story with us today. And the exciting thing is, I mean, that's exciting in and of itself, really. Like that could just be a podcast. But
oh, thanks.
we're also going to look at. She's agreed to allow us to look at her chart. So we're gonna weave in what these stories correlate to in her chart as we go. Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's what we're doing today.
I'm so glad. Yay! I'm happy to be here, and I always appreciate Bradley you taking a look at my chart. It's always an enlightening and inspiring opportunity for me to look a lot deeper. Thanks.
Of course. Yeah. Hello. I got a kitty on my lap now. Yes, beautiful. So one of the things that this is also gonna be on audio, and so I'm not gonna pull up the chart this second, but I'm also gonna talk about it a little bit. But also I have some questions for you just in general too. So Marie is born in 1968. Is that right? Yes,
right.
1968.
Yep.
She is born with Saturn and Aries. And on a recent podcast, the Saturn Day Chat with Osiris, we talked about Saturn and Aries a little bit. And I thought this is perfect because here we have a live human being with Saturn and Aries. So
great.
If you have Saturn and Aries and you're about to have your first Saturn return, you're probably feeling it because it's already a balsamic phase, right? I think that's kind of what I've noticed is every time in my life someone says, "Oh, I'm in my Saturn return," it hasn't returned yet. It's the pre-return that's the hard part, right? You're shaking your head,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've heard that a lot also, and I definitely sensed that the first time. But I would say I'm definitely sensing a lot of things right now.
And also, Marie is also an astrologer.
I am. It's true.
Among many other things.
Yes. Not EA though, not evolutionary astrology. So
right.
That's where I'm very.
Can you say what are your astrological influences and teachers?
Yeah, sure. I tend to use Placidus charts instead of Porphyry, and my main teacher has actually been Rosie Finn, or Roseanne Finn. She's been my primary teacher for over 20 years. And then I have been to 2 EA conferences, which has been fun. And also, so I've participated in also NORWAC, not participated, but I've attended NORWAC a couple times. So various teachers there, right? Laura Nalbandian, and
Laura's great.
She's great. Yeah. Yep. And David Pond is someone I've listened to for years, and then I also listened to a couple podcasts online. Pam Gregory. So,
isn't it true that David and Lori Pond live in the house that you used to live in?
They do.
Can I say that?
Yeah, totally.
Isn't that crazy?
I know. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, it was great. I was living there with a group of women, and we ended up. The landlords were selling the house. We moved out, and David and Lori Pond purchased the house, and they did all the great structural foundation work that needed to happen in the house when they moved in. I can't remember, but I think David said that there was some sort of, he might have even been in some sort of Saturn transit when he moved there, and then he had to do all this foundational work.
Yeah, they are just wonderful, David and Lori. anyone who's gone to Norwalk for years probably has run into them. They're kind of on the on-off cycle now, but
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
they're lovely people.
yeah.
Yep.
And just for the world out there, Roseanne Finn has been an astrologer teaching in Olympia for how long?
Gosh, I don't know. I met her in right around the same time as I met you,
Okay,
but a little bit earlier. I think I
okay,
met her in 97 or 98.
okay.
Yeah.
She's brilliant, and she's one of those astrologers that she's been teaching ever since I've known her, since I've moved here, 23 years ago. She has had been fully booked with readings. She is like,
Yeah.
and she has now learned Vedic is that how you say it?
Yes. Vedic.
Jyotish, Vedic astrology.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And now she incorporates that. She's been
Mm-hmm.
working on a book for many, many years that's getting close to being released.
It
So a little
is.
plug for Rosie Finn,
Yep.
who's not really known in the greater astrology community, but maybe she will be at some point. I don't know.
Yep.
I mean, she
Yep.
doesn't. It's not something that she's like cares that she's not, but
Yeah.
she's just doing her thing here,
It's true.
and
It's
she's
true.
influenced so many lives
Yeah.
here locally in the Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest.
I think once she puts her book out, she'll probably hope to get a little more exposure just so that her book gets out there because
Hmm.
I mean, she's already published two other books that were,
Hmm.
more uh, basic astrology books that are fabulous books, of course. But what's kind of classic about this that you're bringing this up, Bradley, is that my first astrology class was with her and it was on the nodes.
Oh, well, this is a perfect segue into your chart. So Marie, take us back to so this time. What was going on? Are you willing to share a little bit of like what was going on in your life then? How about like before you got into astrology? Before
Mm,
was there a
okay.
well, actually,
I love that.
how about your first Saturn return and the time leading up to that?
Okay.
And so Marie has a North Node in Aries, and it's in the 11th house with Porphyry that we use.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturn's also in Aries in the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
They're maybe like 10 degrees apart. Is that right?
A little further, 13.
13, yeah.
Yep.
We'll see that chart in a second.
Yep.
But for those just listening, yeah, Saturn in Aries in the 11th, and the North Node is in Aries in the 11th house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's see. Well, first, I want to put a little um, thing out there to say that when I was a young girl, my auntie would gift myself and my sisters all little keychains or other memorabilia that had our astrological sun sign on it and some of the characteristics of that. And that's actually when I first became quite curious and tantalized by astrology. It was very like, ooh, cool. What's this? Right? She was the auntie. She like listened to Simon and Garfunkel on 8-track tapes and had hippie beads and things like this, right? And gave us the zodiac sign
Cool.
keychains.
Wow.
So that was my first slight introduction to astrology. And then actually just prior to my Saturn return, I had been well, I had been practicing some creative visualization techniques about how to manifest things in your life, and I had been starting to become successful at that. And I had manifest a job making a lot more money than I had been making. It happened to be for corporate America though, so it wasn't really my soul calling, and I felt like something was dying inside working there. But
How long did you do that?
I did that for 1 year.
Oh, only okay, okay.
That's as long as I
Yeah.
could handle it. I was meditating 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, pretty much, and also doing creative visualization techniques. And my soul was saying, patience, patience, don't worry, it won't always be like this. And so, in the meantime, I manifested this great lakefront apartment in Seattle and on Lake
Mhm.
Washington,
Oh wow.
and I was living there. And then was I decided I wanted to go traveling. I wanted to go to Asia, but I was working for this corporation. And so lo and behold, I had an awareness 2 weeks before I was laid off from my job that I would be laid off in 2 weeks. And so 2 weeks later, I went into the office. They called me in and they ended up laying off myself as well as all of the other outside salespeople in this corporate office. So I didn't even have to feel bad about it, honestly. Not, I don't know that I would have, but regardless. And then I got my first astrology reading. I heard from people, people said, "Oh, you might be in your Saturn return." And I was like, "What's this?" And so I actually
Mm.
went to Astrology et al. And had a reading
Oh.
with Laura.
Oh, really?
I did. That was my
Oh.
first reading
Oh,
ever.
wow.
Yep.
I mean, and Laura she was an evolutionary astrologer, right, at that
Yes.
point, yes, because she
Yes.
learned from
I
Jeffrey.
think so. I mean, I believe
Wow.
so. So that was
I
my
didn't know
first reading. It
that.
was in the U
Okay.
district. Yeah, it was in the U district.
Yeah.
And so that was my
Oh.
first reading. And she said, "Well, you're not quite in your Saturn return yet. You're prior to
Mhm.
your Saturn return.
Mhm.
You're leading up to it." And she said, "You'll be in it when you're traveling." And
Oh.
so, because I decided that I would go to Asia then.
Mhm.
And so I went to Asia. And I looked today, and actually, I think it was a little prior because I turned 28. I believe it was 28. I think I turned 28 when I was in Asia. And so I still was a little prior to my Saturn return.
Mm.
And then so I left after I traveled. I came and I landed in Olympia after that. Post traveling, I had some wiggle time in
Uh-huh.
between there. I thought it was a great idea to live with family since everybody in Asia seems to be living with their family. So I moved home for a short while and worked a temp job and decided it was not so great to live with your family, especially when you're in your Saturn return. And I ended up traveling down to the Southwest, picking up the boyfriend that I met before I went traveling, and then we traveled back up to Olympia, and I ended up landing here. So
Okay.
anyway,
Wow, yeah. So, okay.
so changed community,
Yeah.
11th house.
Yeah. And you've been in this community for a while
I
now.
have. I've been here almost the entire time. I have taken, there were 3 years of a 5 year stint that I was back and forth between Southern Oregon and here. I bought some property down there. And I was back and forth. And
Oh,
then
right.
I
That's
came
right.
back
Yeah.
and landed in Olympia. And now I've been here. I have been traveling for my work. So I've been traveling out of the country and then coming back. And this has been my home base
Yeah.
ever since.
And um, you've done a lot of great things in this community,
Thank you.
I must say, which I'm excited for you to share with us today. And this is okay, this is one of the first things that I wanted to say about the chart is if you think about somebody that has like this human being, wonderful, amazing human being right here, very inspirational.
Hmm.
They've got the north node of Aries in the 11th house and Saturn in Aries in the 11th. And Maria's definitely been somebody who's you've brought a lot of things into the community and you've helped, you've not only like ushered new things into the community, but you've also kind of constantly been a catalyst for
Mm,
things to happen too, wherever you've been at.
mm,
So even though even if it's just like in the realm of like being the idea person sometimes, right? And so it's kind of one of those things. And we were just talking about this before the podcast. I think that this is my opinion, give me some feedback on this, but I think Saturn in Aries is challenging, especially in this culture, because we're just so conditioned to have, like, what does success look like? And if Saturn in Aries is in this constant, the reality is constantly emerging in a state of becoming,
mm,
and or even like people who have Saturn in the first house, it can be like, like their
mm,
whole reality is not really often not just kind of settling into this thing that allows things to be established and matured. Like Saturn's maturity, Aries is just like just starting, right? So but Saturn's just also like the
mm,
definition of reality. So if the
mm,
definition of reality is, it's like just starting, that sounds like I don't want to say terrible, but like in this culture, like that the constant emergent state of becoming for one's whole reality is like, how do you reconcile that
Mm,
with how, well, one, with how reality is set up? It's not really set up to support souls that function like that,
mm,
like it's like it's in a way it's kind of like a one size fits all. I mean, it's not, but
mm,
it's kind of like, can you do these things? If not, you might fall through the cracks, or you might not have any, like, where are you going to end up, or what are you going to do?
mm.
And then that whole psychology of, if you're, quote, starting again, I think that's the hard part with it. The psychology of like, oh, I'm starting another thing.
Mm,
And, like, well, what have you done? Like this whole thing. What do you do? What have you done?
mhm.
It just, in the questions that we ask and how we talk to each other, it's just so deeply ingrained. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if you want to share now or at any point as we go, but that's kind of one of the things I'm really interested in, because
Hmm.
it seems like a psychological potential trap,
Yes.
and it's something that maybe all
Yeah.
the Saturn and Aries people kind of need to overcome or work with in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I'll say a quick thing about it. There is something I'll want to make sure to share later about what you're speaking to, Bradley. Thank you, because again, as astrology lovers, one of the things that I feel like is so beneficial is when we hear a truth that resonates for us about our life and who we are. That's where there's can also be that resting in, and that like, oh, I feel so seen, right? So there is some really beautiful reflection of when you share that. There's a part of me that is more at ease, right, with what I have gone through a lot in my life. And
Mhm.
one of those pieces has when I feel when I have allowed myself to really focus and get clear about the beginner's mind, or wow, I could start something new at any time, that's when I'm happy. That's when I can actually source a sense of peace, even about what it is I'm doing, is when I'm okay with the fact that I'm starting something brand new that I haven't done. Right. And when I've been in
Mm.
really held that, then that is so with you sharing this, it's definitely reminiscent. Maybe sometimes I end up feeling like when the planets haven't made it back around to a certain place yet, maybe we've kind of worn that out and it hasn't happened again for right. It had been a theme, and then I kind of lost track of it, and now maybe perhaps as Saturn is moving closer to Aries, I will get closer to that mentality again. Or but just literally with you bringing it up, it's kind of like a whew. Right. Yeah. So um so I definitely feel this a greater sense of peace with you simply sharing that. Definitely.
That's great. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
And I might have to look at you through the screen more, otherwise I'm going to hurt my neck.
Oh,
So,
yes. Okay, great. That sounds fine. I'll look at you this way
but of
too.
course I want to look over, but
It's all right. We're looking at the folks that might end up watching in the future, or us, right?
yeah.
I can see the mirror of you here. Yeah.
So, so one of the things that I remember that was one of the, I think this might be, well, I met you through the food co-op, so you were part of that community for a number of years, and I know that you did a lot of things just in that collective, and for that organization business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then also at that time, I remember I don't know what year you did this, but you started with another woman, I believe. Is that right? You co-founded
Yep.
together a is it Your Money Matters? Was that the name
It
of
was
it?
called Your Money Matters. Yep.
Okay.
It was a buy local program. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a
I
little
would love
bit?
to. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so the buy local program was started back in 2001. And she and I decided that we both knew that it was an important thing would be to support and promote local business. And I knew it a lot more, I would say just intuitively than having a lot of reasons spelled out. She and I both were much more advocates for a local business rather than supporting corporations. And yet it was,
Mm.
just prior to kind of the local movement. So it was, I say that it was before the local movement became cool. So we were kind of on the forefront of that cutting edge. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of my time. I'm an Aquarius sun, right? And so there can be a little not always knowing why I'm doing something, but I might be stepping forward and doing something. And then, like I said, having to figure out, oh, people really don't know why to buy local yet. We need to be able to describe this in words and concepts and understanding for people to be able to move in this direction. So, what we did is we started a local business coupon book. It was before a lot of, it was even it was before a lot of the technology, the ease of technology, I would say. We neither of us were graphic designers. We ended up having to hire one. But in the meantime, what we did is we actually mocked up a coupon book, handwritten, and went to people and just literally asked them for $50 to start this project, these businesses. And a bunch of them said yes. So we started that. We were literally, Bradley, hand assembling the books because we didn't think it out, and we ended up having to like hand collate the books on September 11th of 2001, which was literally
Oh,
the day of the
wow.
Twin Towers
Okay.
coming down. Um, and we were doing this, and my business partner at the time, she had us listen to mainstream radio, and she said, let's listen to see when the narrative changes to pointing a finger instead of having reverence and honoring and sadness for what had happened, how the next war would be spun. And so literally I felt like we were able to kind of capture that moment, when the first seed was planted of, oh, there's someone to blame, and who are we going to go to war with because of this? And so anyhow, so that was interesting. So it felt really like a political movement. It felt like we were doing part of the
Mm.
solution, and we were dedicated to that project. I was dedicated to that project for 13 years. Um, there
Wow.
was there out of that 13 years, there was 1 year that maybe there were 2 years that the book was not published. It might have just been 1 year though, that she and I were in a lot of transition and a lot going on, so we decided to take a year off. And we also, during that 13 years, she and I were together as business partners for 7 of it. And then that project, which was called which was actually Women Rock Productions, was the name of our business. We ended up turning
Awesome.
it over to a nonprofit organization that was a sustainable community type organization that was looking for a sustainable economy, like a how to get more into the economics of sustainability. And so I ended up moving over with the project. I volunteered for the first year that it went over with the nonprofit, and then from that point on was paid to do that part time, while I also was working at the food co-op part time. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing the Your Money Matters coupon books, when I moved out here right away, and I think I bought a coupon book pretty much every year it seemed like, and um yeah, it was a great way to know all the local businesses that you could go to, and I mean, before we had smartphones and
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and to have
dial up.
like hours of operation on there, and
Hmm.
this is a local business, and really that was it, is wanting to highlight. I mean, some of the businesses that chose not to participate in it, it was like, well, they were like, well, we don't feel like we need to put ourselves out there because we are a local business. And we're like, right. And we feel like we're kind of helping raise awareness of why people need to go to your business as well, regardless of whether or not you're in the book. And so, so it was definitely, like you said, before we had a lot of the technology that's accessible to our fingertips today. Um, One of our kind of claims to fame, even though our project never got as much traction as I'd say like the Bellingham project, which was amazing. Sustainable Connections up there. I mean, wow,
Oh,
those
okay.
folks. It was a couple that had moved to Bellingham from California that had been
Hmm.
had a lot of corporate business type experience, but they moved there and they ended up asking us. We were like, oh my god, we were so flattered. They asked us if they could mimic what we had created by doing a local business coupon book, as if we had like some sort of
Right.
copyright on it or something. We were like, please, yes, go for it. Anyway, it was really lovely, and their program really, we s- we did do some expansion rather other than the coupon book, where we had some local business talks and would connect local businesses with like composting services in Olympia and how they could do food waste
Oh,
compost and things
wow.
like that.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was fun.
Yeah. And I mean, you really were. The thing I think is really cool about the whole thing. I mean, all of it's I think is just great, but also like you were really like on the ground, like going to the businesses, like like it was like kind of this true like Aquarius in the 10th house, Aquarius, sun and moon and
And Mercury.
Mercury all in the 10th house, like well known in the community and really just out there connecting people and educating the community
Mm.
so much. I mean that's like maybe it's not something that if you would say if you like off the cuff said things that you did, but you've always been educating your community all the time, and
Mm.
it's a really beautiful piece.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely been something that I enjoy, right? I love community. I love people. I love the diversity of, and that even was very fun going into the different businesses, and meeting the business owners and finding out why they did what they did. And yeah, yeah. And I just want to say on a little side note, because you brought up the co-op. I mean, the co-op that we know each other from is run on, it's a consensus based decision making model. So it's not just any co-op, right? I mean, I know maybe a lot of people do know some cooperatives would actually be based on consensus, but to me that also epitomized that aspect,
mm, hmm,
right, of
hmm,
the Aquarian aspect anyway, in the which,
yeah,
since you're an Aquarius
yeah.
also, and you work there.
This is true. These things are true right now. Yeah. Another event that we got connected through that you played an enormous role in was Oli Now.
Yeah, that was
Can
a fun one.
can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
So it was called Only Now Celebrating What Works, and that was in 2003.
Hmm.
And that was myself and three other women that put together this event that it was like a street. We closed down a couple streets, and there was some city repair that happened that weekend where they ended up creating, in a little corner of the library parking lot area, they created this cute little mailbox and I think a bench and things,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you ended up designing and painting on the intersection a mandala.
Well, yeah, I mean, you asked me for a design. I mean,
Well, yeah.
there was no, I mean, a lot of people helped paint. I mean,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but
yeah,
I mean, but
but
you're the one that
yeah, I was part of that.
create,
Yes,
yes.
yes, there was,
And then we had a
yes,
stage with music, and there was another kind of workshopy area, and there was a puppet theater going on, and
wasn't there was it someone had the bicycle blender going?
yeah, the bicycle blender.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eli had the bicycle blender. There were shirts, right? We
Oh
had the
yeah,
shirts with the
yeah,
mandala that you had created, that you had
yeah,
designed on the t-shirts, and
and
those were being also, some people were painting them in with color pens.
it was yeah, it was at an intersection downtown by the library, and it was
Hmm.
also right next door to that was a local business, Fertile Ground Guest House.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep. And actually, that was the first Astro Ritual Theater, was that
yes,
weekend.
yes,
Yep. Hmm.
there was It's like a 14 pointed star
It
or
was a
something.
14-pointed
Yeah.
star. Yep,
Okay. Yeah.
yep. Two 7-pointed stars that were happening simultaneously in the sky. It was part of the reason why I was inspired to actually want to do an event then. I think we did it on September 20th, but it was right around fall equinox anyhow. And
So, I mean, some people might know what astral ritual theater is, and I'm sure you can imagine, but do you want to speak to that a little
sure,
bit? And
sure.
yeah.
So so what we did then, and I've been doing ever since in small capacity and sometimes in a private gatherings or occasionally public, is embodying the planets and interacting with one another in whatever the lineup is at that time, and sharing with the people present what the energetic of that planet in that sign, um, and then the relationship thereof is highlighting at that time. And so it's been a theatrical uh, opportunity to embody the planets and talk about astrologically what's happening and uh, what's being offered really to humanity at that moment as gifts or lessons or questions that we can ask ourselves in order to uh, encourage our growth or awakening or evolutionary process or what have you. Yeah.
Can you say, like, what's the ritual part? How does
Great
that fit in?
question. Great question. I've been kind of playing with how much ritual actually happens within it or not.
Hmm.
So um I've been kind of questioning that part, but I do love the acronym Astro Ritual Theater
Yeah.
because then it's art. But the ritual
Oh, right.
aspect,
Okay. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I ever realized that.
it's part of the reason why it is that. But
Right. Wow. Okay.
the ritual aspect has been many times at the beginning. It definitely is kind of ceremonial, and some of them have a little more ceremony to them, or where there might even be a processing in of the planets, and ringing of bells or lighting of candles,
Hmm.
and then a finalization of that moment at the end, and then a leaving also.
Hmm.
So really, you know, honestly, I feel like I could still call it ritual because I have done a lot of public rituals in my life with other things, when I was in a pagan group. But I would say that the ritual is simply intentional calling in of the planetary energies. And it's honestly one of the reasons, Bradley, why I don't always want it to be a long period of time that a person is actually going to be embodying that planetary energy, because I've witnessed that person with that role really embodying it to an extent that it's impacting their life a lot.
Oh,
And so
interesting. Okay. Yeah.
I'd say the longest period of time that I've had to prepare and do one, it was 2 weeks. And um, I'll just say that uh, Venus was retrograde, and by the time we did the event, Venus was just stationing to go direct, and they had a meltdown. And so, and
Mm.
it felt very Venus retrograde stationing direct meltdown ish. So I was like,
Mm.
whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, there's also, I mean, is there a casting of the circle? I mean, is it always in a circle, or is it sometimes just in a rectangular room and there's no like awareness of a circle on the floor? Or
Good point. Good point. Thank you. It has been in a circle for about half of them.
hmm.
And then sometimes it's been actually that we are a little bit more on a stage, but I do tend to like to represent whether things are trining or squaring, right? And so so that part is somewhat um
Hmm.
connected to the physical shape
Yeah.
of what's happening in the sky.
I remember in the 2003 one, I was Uranus, and I think
Okay.
I was in all silver, and
Yes.
maybe it had just gone into Pisces or something. Like,
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember where it had
I
gone.
don't know.
Yes, yes. That was fun. That
I,
was
I
fun.
think there was a Uranus-Mars conjunction.
Oh, yes. Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
What were you?
The first one I was Pallas Athene
Oh,
in I believe in Aries in the house of community. Um
that's
yeah. It felt very fitting. It felt very fitting.
yeah.
And at this point what I do is I'm actually Cosme, the cosmic narrator. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
the cosmic
Oh,
narrator and I wear a silver suit
oh.
and a silver bodysuit. And then
Okay.
for some of them I'm actually it's all right, I'm gonna share this. I
Okay.
do have a silver sequin bra that I wear, and depending on
Uh,
what what the company is, whether or not I get to I flash some of the silver sequin bra.
oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad there's not a live audience right now, or else I probably wouldn't have said that.
I didn't know that. That's great.
Anyway, so yeah, so Cosme is then introduces the planets and is able to
Cool.
fill in just in case someone forgets their lines. So
Cool. Cool.
yeah, anyhow,
Yeah. Um, I was gonna jump ahead
please.
to um well, I was gonna jump ahead to the LOL, but was there something else you want to touch on before that?
I think I mean I'll just throw in because you're saying this. It's really
Okay.
beautiful. Thank you. It's having great reflection. There are many various other events that I've helped with, but they tended to be one-offs. So
Mm-hmm.
the Mother's Day tea and International Women's Day and a couple others that were um,
What's the Mother's Day tea? What's that?
the Mother's Day tea, I actually also organized with the women from Fertile Ground,
Mm-hmm.
and we did a tea down at the Gooey Duck Fountain downtown near Percival Landing, where we actually ended up serving tea and inviting mothers and daughters and others to share. And it was Nikki McClure actually did a little scroll that had the Mother's Day proclamation on it, which was basically the inception of Mother's Day was actually based on mothers uniting um, to stop war,
Mm-hmm.
and it was actually a proclamation. I think by Elizabeth Cady Stanton. I'm sorry if it might have been Julia Ward Howe instead. It was
Mm-hmm.
one of the suffragettes that had put out a call to say mothers. We did not raise our sons to go to war and basically cause bloodshed on
Mm-hmm.
other sons in foreign countries. And so it was actually it was a call for peace. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, big theme right now.
yeah. We have in our town here in Olympia, we have had for years also the women in black, which in and also honoring this, have just been dressed all in black and often just are out there on was it a Friday? I can't remember.
Yep. Yep.
And with signs about um, ending war and whatever oppression and terrible things going on, raising some awareness.
Absolutely. And actually, not only that, but at the same time, a lot of times, Glenn Anderson and the Fellowship of Reconciliation right across the street, also holding signs for peace
Hmm,
and reconciliation for years and
that's right.
years and years weekly. He's been out there for over 25
Hmm,
years. It's probably going on
wow.
30 or more now. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm,
Yeah. We've got some pretty amazing people that have been diligent on this. We're not alone in our as we move toward the Aquarian age.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah.
so the Can you share about this? So the LOL.
Yeah, LOL. LOL. We had a feeling that we wanted it to actually be called LOL Fest. We were trying to play around with the name, and it was literally a boy who was, oh gosh, I want to say he might have been 10 years old or 9 at the time, who was in the meeting, who helped us come up with the name Love Our Local. We were playing around with all the words local, love, and we were like, oh, it'd be great if it was LOL. And then he's like, what about Love Our Local? We were like, yes, that's it. Anyway, so it was very much in a similar guise to Oli Now. However, it was myself and my co-conspirator was Daniel Landon. And what was kind of classic is what we did is we did the event at the corner near San Francisco Street Bakery on Bethel and San Francisco Street. And what the beauty of that was that I lived on San Francisco Street, he lived on Bethel Street. We would call or text each other and say, okay, let's meet at the corner. And he would ride his bike from his house and I would walk from my house and we would get there at the exact same moment. So anyway, and so that was where we needed to map out to close
That's
the
awesome.
streets and to have a street party. So he is very connected to the musical world, and he's a musician himself and participates in a lot of bands, a couple bands now, Luna Melt and maybe another, but at the time was very connected to, he was an Air of Rav, etc. Anyhow, so that's just some of the history of the music. But we decided that everything needed to be local, so we didn't even allow great bands or artisans from
Oh,
out
right.
of town
Okay.
to come in unless they were literally within Olympia. I think we even kind of like whenever it pushed the envelope, we were very aware of it, and we would almost apologize, like, okay, yeah, they're only in the county, right? So, but one of the things that we thought was really powerful about that is one year we actually we ended up having, for example, composting toilets, and one of the co-owners lived in Olympia, but the main, we found out that the main units actually lived somewhere else, like in Portland or something, and they got stuck in traffic on the way to Olympia, and they were late getting here. And it was kind of classic because that was part of the point, was the fact that when it's local, that you can draw on community resources and resiliency of being local, and that you wouldn't get stuck in traffic because you're just right here, right? And so we had many vendors and artisans. We had a food area, we had a main stage, and we had a kids area. We would have various activities, decorate your bike, things like this that the local toy store would usually sponsor and be in
Oh,
charge of.
that's adorable.
Since it was, yeah, it was very sweet. And there was even a woman who used to live in this community, Pat Rasmussen. She had goats, and she brought her goats
Oh,
one year, and then someone else brought their local pig. For it was like that kids were able to pet the pig and connect with the goats. Anyway, so there are also a couple of years there were two stages actually, and sometimes we would have one main stage and a soapbox area where people would be able to literally
oh.
stand on a soapbox. We kind of like had it as a soapbox, but literally painted soap, said soapbox on it, and just grab a microphone and start speaking or have open mic or what have you. So it was that happened, I believe, for 7 years, and I was involved for the majority of those years. I actually stepped out almost completely one year. I think that was year 5, and then stepped back in year 6, and then I started kind of, one of the things that was great actually that happened is that one of the women who got involved the last year that I was involved, she at the very end of the night, she was starting to direct me and tell me what to do. And I was at first very much in my, Saturnian, who do you think you're talking to? I like co-produce this event. Like, I know that this is David Griner's tarp and where his car is to put it and all this other, right? Like, I was just like, I was like, oh, Oh my gosh, so offended, right? And then like after I allowed myself to be offended after she like gave me directions 3 times and I was kind of rolling my eyes like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna, scream at this woman or something. I all of a sudden instead had this revelation. She knows where everything goes. I could actually step out. I could step out and she would be able to step in. And so there was something about that that was so inviting and so beautiful. So I was able to step out, and the next year it happened without me,
Mm,
and I felt fine about that. And and then unfortunately it didn't continue after that, but
mhm.
but uh but that's okay. It is what it is.
And just to note, what I is as far as timing goes, we're talking about timing, we're talking about Saturn and Aries a little bit here, right? Um, the Your Money Matters and the Buy Local Coupon book, that lasted about a half a Saturn cycle,
Oh,
right? Because when you stepped out, it went like another year, and then it kind of like
that's true.
so by the time it had its Saturn opposition, it ended, and then here we're talking about a quarter of a Saturn cycle.
Ooh, good
There was
point.
something else that you had been said with like 7 years. Now I'm like, oh, I missed one.
Oh,
There
huh.
was something else, but
Okay.
it might have been hmm, anyway. Yeah. So
Okay.
so
Hmm.
Saturn and timing. That's interesting, and I
I love that.
don't have for you the exact.
Mm,
Well, I mean, on September 11th, 2001, Saturn was in Gemini,
okay.
so that would have probably been in a sextile to your Saturn
Oh, right.
in Aries. I was just thinking, I was like, okay, it
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
tied up
Okay.
directly, but
Hmm. Well, and you know what? That was right after I started a new Saturn cycle since I'm a Gemini rising, or
mm.
soon after, perhaps. I don't remember exactly what degree it was at, but since I'm 5 degree Gemini rising, so
So the Love Our Local Fest, was it one day, all day?
it was
Okay,
1 day, all day. Yes,
okay.
it started. Gosh, it maybe started at noon actually, and then would go until 9 p.m.
Mhm.
So we had morning to set up. So it was set up and take down all in one day.
And so I mean, it sounds like, I mean, I've been at it. I was selling stuff once. I shared a tent. Like what, I don't know, can you speak to like what did you see happening in the community, that was the wind in the sails of, coming up with this idea and then seeing this play out? Like what, can you talk about that a little bit?
Mm, mm. Gosh. Well, I mean, I would say, I guess I don't know if this is what you're getting at. Maybe you can, I'll answer a little and then
Okay,
you
okay.
tell me if this is kind of the direction you were thinking of. But um, it definitely was an amazing time to come together and see each other. It was usually we did it in um, August before school came back into session. So it was kind of toward the end of the summer when a lot of people were done traveling, and then it was like a kind of like a street reunion where people were able to not only see each other, but then part of the intention that Daniel really felt really firm on, which I appreciated, but then I eventually would have been okay moving it to a nature area. But part of his intention was that we really take over the street. He said, I feel like there's, we
Mm,
just we are we're so focused on we're such a car society that let's take over some of these streets. This is our land, right? As general public speaking. I'm not
mm,
talking about the tribal people, right? Which we did invite local tribal folks various years to come
mm,
um and just, you know, say words about this region and what has transpired over this time. But we really felt like that was one of the that was one of the cornerstones. So it was, gosh, I wish I would have done a little research and looked at the website, which is still up, which was definitely had some values of celebrating together. I mean, one of the things was about celebration, is that it was the whole thing. If you can't dance, I ain't coming to your revolution. Like that was said to be a quote from a revolutionary back in the day. We don't know if that's actually true, um, but that was part of it. It's like, if let's enjoy changing the world. It doesn't have to just be agonizing and hard, right? Let's enjoy each other's company, and let's celebrate the beauty of our community and the artisans. We have so much that's right here, right? We have so much creative life force that's being brought forth through art and sound, and even those of us who are dancers instead of musicians, right, dancing on the street. We ended up painting a mandala in the intersection to help slow down traffic. That was the intention. And then the city would have issue with that sometimes because of the fact that um if it's not repainted every year, then it doesn't look as good or something. Anyway, there were various excuses why it didn't wasn't supposed to happen. Which, sorry, I'm just putting it that way because that's how I feel about it. Anyway, um, but just that, and even just like with the animals, there's so much breadth of knowledge and wisdom and fun and play and education that we have. We would have different speakers come up. There were a couple of years that I would have give people little time slots between the bands where there were literally nonprofit after nonprofit plugging their group, and they'd literally have like 3 to 4 minutes, and I'd be like really strict with their time so that we'd make sure that the band would go back on stage, the next band would go back on stage on time. So it was just, there's so much that we have in every community that I've been visiting anyhow, but Olympia is one of these that has such nectar of a wellspring of wisdom and love and connection, and it's just seeing each other helps really formulate that, weaving that web of what we need in order to be able to move to this next new paradigm that we're so desperately needing, but just we're already doing it. It's just that it's about gaining the momentum and reflecting it, what each of our gifts, skills, and talents are, so that we can bring them forth. And there was a lot of talent that was shared on that day. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm thinking about with this too is your own, well, you may have a few different businesses or names, but Heartfire Productions, is that correct? That's another one that
Uh-huh.
you're
Uh-huh.
right. And that, I mean, it seems like a common thread, and especially with the Love Our Local and the event, is there's this, you know, thing that you can't measure, and it's just that it's feeding our hearts in some capacity,
Mm.
that, it's just a beautiful thing, and I think we need that, and it changes us and it softens us in some really positive ways.
Mm.
um yeah.
Mm. Mm. Thanks, Bradley.
And it seems like when I think of everything you've done, that is a common thread of the heart. It's like really getting to the heart of the matter, inspiring people at the heart of the issue, or reaching people's hearts.
Mm.
It's a
Mm.
really that's a really beautiful thing.
Thanks. I feel like that's definitely been a journey for me. My first long-term boyfriend would say it's a long way from the head to the heart. And 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 I was like, wait, but mine are both conjunct. Uh-oh, now what? They're both in Aquarius. And yet it's like, but because of them being in Aquarius, I feel like that has been a journey for me to really find the depth of feeling, right? And it's like it's been through community and through connecting with people that has helped me soften and helped me be able to actually feel instead of just go into the analytical aspect of the Aquarian mind and um, conceptualizing community. I feel like one of the things that I say a lot of times about Aquarius energy is that we forget sometimes that we are a part of it, right? So we may end up thinking, oh yeah, humanity and the bigger picture and everyone's skills, gifts, and talents, and then we forget that we are also in that circle and that we're a part of the circle. It's like, I feel like I learned that a lot at the co-op is facilitating meetings. I loved facilitating meetings as that Aquarian who loves different people's personalities and wanting to make sure as many voices come in as possible. But then I would literally say, okay, now I'm taking my facilitator hat off and putting my worker hat on and saying, this is my opinion as Marie. Right. And maybe that's actually a little bit more of the Aries even energy that's coming in, that is in that 11th house. But it's like, it's helped me understand that I also have a role in this, right? And even if my role sometimes feels impersonal in a way because it's about the collective, it's for the collective, it's like, well, what do I want and need also? It's one of the
Mm,
things I'll just
mm.
speak to that Aries energy in the 11th and what we're talking about organizationally that I would forget and it would be hard sometimes. I mean, after Love Our Local Fest would happen, sometimes I was sorting recycling for days at my own house
Oh wow.
because we, didn't have the volunteer crew yet, right? Because it's like you can have a big picture vision, but until you actually implement it and
Hmm.
figure out how to get the support and the help, you're freaking doing it
Right.
yourself,
Yeah, that is very Aries, right? Because
Uh-huh.
um, I like to compare, like, because from the Virgo standpoint, it's just like, well, you're considering all these details and you might not even initiate or go forward because it's like, no, like, do you realize how many things we have to think about and take care of? But then
Yes.
here we have the
Whoa.
the Aries. It's like we're just gonna do it,
Totally.
and
It
so you learned as you went, kind of.
Yeah, it might be why I haven't done it for a while though.
With the Your Money Matters, I mean, that was many years. Did that evolve and improve over the? I mean, was the first year it sounded like you were
Oh,
just like, oh, we're just gonna.
absolutely.
That was
Absolutely.
very Aries, just sewing them up at the last minute kind of
It's
thing.
true. It's
Okay.
true. But it did, you're right. We definitely, with that, we were able to see, okay, it kind of made it good that, that graphic design was not either of our skill set. It was like, okay, we cannot do that. It's just not an option, right? And so finding other people with other skill sets was vital, and then relying on that, right?
Hmm.
I think that we're bringing in the nodes part too, the South Node in Libra, and then I do have Mars in Pisces too, can be a little bit of that martyring energy also of like, um, instead of really, oh, right on. Are you going to share the chart? Great. So, so there it is. There's my chart. So that South Node in Libra and then Mars in Pisces. Just, uh, I was just thinking of kind of the martyr energy of not not asking for help, right? And just being like, okay, fine, I'll just do it all myself. And right, like just I'm thinking of the South Node in Libra being the keeping the peace instead of being bold and stepping in, right?
is in Placidus?
Oh, I was going to say that.
Like, wait a
I
second.
I was just going to say, I just noticed with North Node in the, um, um, there it is. Great. There we go. Okay. Yeah.
That's not as good, but that's okay.
Okay.
We can
Yep.
see that.
Great.
That'll work for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyhow, so just thinking about that aspect is as I've had more years on the planet, um, learning the importance and the value of relying on other people's skills. So you're right, we did learn through the coupon book to be doing that, which was huge. And then I would say that it was actually Daniel that did a great job at rounding up volunteers. And it was just because the event started getting more awareness. There were just more people that wanted to participate and volunteer and make it happen. So it was just a natural progression also.
Is it, I mean, do you, I guess, okay, do you feel like you're like, I mean, all right, trying to find the words how to get to, do you, identify with being, somebody who brings things into community? And that's my first question, I guess.
Okay. I used to. Yes, I used to. With the events that you're speaking to specifically, yes. And so this is the thing that I had wanted to, that I thought about bringing up earlier. So I appreciate you bringing this in, is that what I realize that has felt a little challenging is that I've brought things, but they haven't continued. So that, so I appreciate what you had stated about that Aries energy, about starting something or initiating something, but then the fact that these both, I mean, both the big projects, I would say, being the Buy Local program, as well as the Love Our Local Fest, and then like at the co-op, the ecological planning committee that I started. I don't know if that's continued, but I doubt it, right? I see you shaking your head
Not
no.
really.
So right. So things that I've started
Uh-huh.
that haven't continued, that to me is the challenge. Then is that's the part where I end up seeing myself, just to be honest, is seeing myself as a failure, because I end up going, oh shit, right? Like there was this really cool thing and then it stopped, right? And you know, I mean, just to be honest, the buy local program, which was then taken on when it was, there was some hard stuff that happened with that, with the me kind of feeling pushed out almost of my own project. Um, and and then I was like, oh, good God, this has been really freaking hard, especially lately. It's felt like pulling teeth. So I get to step out of this, and they're going to take it on, and they're going to keep on going. And then it didn't. So there's a part of me that's wondered if that's part of the reason why I haven't launched anything else big lately. I am in a support role right now with a project that I love,
Yeah.
but there hasn't been anything really big that I've set my sights on creating in the world at this point. And I feel like part of it has been like, well, how am I going to set it up so that it could continue without me? And so I would be curious for you to say, well, do I have to completely let that go? Or is it also, again, with age comes some wisdom, and I could potentially have some systems in place and that type of thing to make it so that it might actually be able to continue without me?
Oh. I mean, you want me to respond to that?
I do.
Okay.
I would love to hear your opinion on
I
that.
can. We were talking about this all a little earlier too, more. in depth. So this is kind of our continuing our conversation from earlier. And one of the things that I was saying earlier, and also if you're listening to this and you can't see the chart, the north node is at 21 degrees Aries and some minutes in the 11th house. So Marie's about to have a nodal return. And obviously, that's pretty significant in relation to the themes that we're talking. And in fact, you just had the Libra new moon eclipse on your south node, which I don't know if we're going to go there, but I'm sure that there's some stories that could be shared there too. So the ruler of the Pluto's in Virgo in the fifth house. Pluto conjunct Uranus in Virgo in the fifth. South node in Libra in the fifth, and then the ruler of that is Venus in Capricorn in the eighth house, which, I mean, your money matters is kind of perfect for Venus and Capricorn in the eighth house, really, right? Like
True.
shared resources, and just kind of, I mean, all these things that you've been sharing and we've been talking about that you've done have involved this, like one of the things that I remember I was with Darlene and one day, like she was like, yeah, co-ops are, scorpionic or Scorpio. And I just realized, and then all of our bags say stronger together, right? This whole idea, like when we join forces together, we're stronger, right? Um, and so that's always stuck with me as like, like the polarity of second house Taurus, which is empty there in your chart, is obviously like in evolutionary astrology, self-sufficiency, self-reliant, going it alone. Having a south node in Libra is obviously coming from a very cooperative place, like let's work together, let's join forces. And then that ruler being, Venus in Capricorn in the eighth house, right? So then there's this like, how can we pool our resources to work together? And so and obviously, I mean, even with like the eco planning and I mean, all the things you've done have involved like resources, awareness of environment, community, energy, like all these things, right? I mean, we don't really have time to go into it all, but there's this common thread that you can relate with EA through that. Um, there's definitely a lot of other stories which we don't have time to go into either, obviously. But and but I am circling back to your question here. I'm just kind of giving some chart context.
Yeah, thanks.
Um, so, and I think that, I guess like my thought on it is, it's just like there's no like I failed or I did something wrong. Like we're just going through this, like figuring out what we're doing, and we're here. And from the evolutionary astrology point of view, is what leads that is the soul's desire. And like that's why we incarnate. And I think that there's this interesting, maybe like I don't know, like a psychological rub between this idea of like let's get enlightened and get rid of our desires, whereas like I've always loved evolutionary astrology is like, like you incarnated because you have a desire. Let's look at why you incarnated. What is your soul wanting to do? And so I think that's what I love about EA, is that we kind of get back to that sense of, I mean, so this is a Pluto in the fifth house in evolutionary astrology is going to have a sense of having some special purpose in life. So it's like I've incarnated, I have some special purpose. It's in Virgo, right? And so this purpose has always been connected to some service of some capacity. In this case, obviously with community and right. And so there's that piece, right? And I guess, I mean, I say all that to say that I think that, to me, my sense is, if your soul is called, if you're called, if you have this sense of, I think it's like it's the pull. Like to me, it's like if you go back and think of like, why did I start the money matters. Like
Mm.
what was my desire when I started the Love Our Local? Like it wasn't like part of you was like, ah, do I really want to do this? You know, like you were decided that this is good. You know, you were birthing, you were bringing into creation, right? And so I think that my sense is that that spirit of being in the creative process, that desire to bring something forth, is stronger than anything
Mm.
else. And then that's
Mm.
when, to me, like it's not a matter of if, it's a
Mm.
matter of when. And I think that um, you know, I mean, if this is a portrait for your soul, you're probably going to be continuing to do these, like bring things into the world, you know, beyond this incarnation. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, and I think that, I mean, I guess the part that I think is really interesting is, I mean, obviously from an EA point of view, the Venus is in Capricorn, and it's also squaring Saturn, so we could see that even I like having Saturn in Aries alone, is, I think, is hard, because Saturn's all like, bring this to fruition, bring this to maturity, bring this to completion. What have you succeeded in doing? And Aries is like, I'm a sprout. I'm starting off, and
Totally.
like, oh, I'm
Yes.
not there. I'm not climbing the rungs. I'm starting another ladder, And
Mm-hmm.
so that psychological challenge within this culture and society is a challenge for that. And then so I think that um, you might have that challenge even more than other souls with Saturn and Aries, because you've got Venus and Capricorn and it squares that Saturn. So there's even more of this Libra compare and contrast, like,
Mm.
how am I comparing? Look at these people, like, look how well off they are, look what they did. And like, I think that, like, from that point of view, um yeah, you want to go out. Yeah, I mean, and there's where you're at in life is like, am I going to really put forth all, like, you're more aware of than in the past, where, like, when you were doing the recycling, you probably have like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, like, I have more of a sense of, I'm not just gonna jump into something maybe like I did 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
So there's that piece. um but I think there's something about that, the desire and the calling and the spark. So, like, to me, to bring it back to that transit, when then you have the nodal return, when Saturn maybe, and also like when you have your Saturn return, to me those are all like those seed moments of
Mm.
um I think they are going to reveal something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, it's not a matter of I mean, you can't really know with Aries, because it's in this state of becoming. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that, like, with like Saturn Capricorn alone, it's just like, let's find the pattern, let's find the regularity, so then we can rely on something consistent. And Saturn and Aries is like, the whole definition of your reality is that there's going to be no consistent pattern.
Right, right. Well, and I've definitely felt stewing, just so that, right, just to be honest, there have been many stewings, and it's feeling like it's there's something incubating
Mm,
that is waiting. It's right there, and I think I know what it is, but I
okay, okay.
haven't quite
Yeah, yeah.
um I haven't done it yet. I've literally been thinking about it for more than a year, and I
Oh,
keep getting the same type of idea over and over. So I'm pretty sure I I have a pretty good sense of it,
mm,
and it's just and I could see it being launched wherever I am, in whatever community I'm currently at,
mm,
whether I'm traveling in Mexico and as long as I'm stationary for a short period of time, even presenting it to various communities potentially. But I do imagine Olympia being very receptive.
mhm.
So, um,
Okay.
yes.
we'll stay in the mystery with that. Look forward to hearing more.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a time check.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of getting
Yeah, I
close here.
imagine. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're kind of. I mean, I'm trying to think if we have any closing things or wrap up or.
Well, I had no idea that I would be talking about myself so much. So so thank you for entertaining me um to do a lot of reflection at this time about these aspects of my life that do feel quite related and relatable to potentially this nodal return, as well as getting close to my Saturn return. Um, I guess I would like to say one thing that feels very connected to the nodes, and that is there's definitely also been big relational um, partnership self kind of uh, learnings in my life,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and that's been huge for me, and so I feel like it's very clear that that's a part of this nodal axis for me, is finding my own self, my own sovereignty, my own individual expression, my own needs, wants, and desires. That's been a hard one for me to actually even say out of my mouth, that I get to have needs, wants, and desires. Not only do I get to have them, but then to actually figure out what they are. um, and then in relationship also, and like even looking at my chart in community, right? So what are my needs, wants, and desires? And to be able to also not completely um uh not completely focus on relationship only, right? South Node
Mm-hmm.
Libra.
Mm-hmm.
um but also not leave it behind. Also honoring the needs, desires, and wishes of another that I am in connection with and relationship with, without thinking that I have to completely sidestep mine and not honor my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has been a huge, huge theme for me, and is right now as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so so with the eclipse happening on my south node, I've had a lot of tears today. Um, I and I have a lot of curiosity about what's ready to unfold. I'll be traveling soon and doing my own thing, and I have been very connected to another person that's in this local vicinity, and I'm venturing off, and it's there's a lot of tenderness there for me. So, and especially that we're in Libra season, to give additional weight, really, or focus to not completely letting the other go in a way that feels like it's solely Aries, or solely being
Mm-hmm.
you know, the sovereign being without connection to another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that we often talk about in evolutionary astrology is, the polarity to Pluto is the soul's evolutionary path, but it doesn't mean that we don't do our Pluto. Like your soul still incarnated because you had a desire for, um, to manifest a special purpose in this life. And relative to that, the Libra South Node, it's not like don't ever do your south node. Like if you have a north node in Aries, it's not like nope, you can't have relationship. Like it's not saying that, right? But it seems like the challenge is until it evolves that it totally incorporates that Aries North node, then there's,
Okay.
right, the relive
Right.
dynamics of
Okay.
why it wouldn't do that balance.
Thank you. Okay, that's really valuable. I get
Oh,
it. Okay,
okay.
thanks.
Yeah,
That's really, you just hit the nail on the head with that. Thank you.
cool.
Got
Okay.
it. Beautiful. Because because years ago you gave me a little tidbit which was hilarious, and it was it wasn't as it landed, but it was landed for the time that it was very important for me to hear, because you I said, Bradley, what if I just completely let go of relationship and just never focus on it ever again this lifetime? What do you think about that? And you said, well, you would basically develop a major skip step dynamic, and then you would come back next lifetime and really have to work it. I was like, oh God, what? And so
That's a long story if we got into how the chart shows that. I actually brought this question to the School of Evolutionary Astrology message board and discussed it with Rad many, many years ago. And Marie's chart is an example of how a chart shows that you could potentially develop a skip step. Actually, my chart also is a potential to develop. But anyway,
uh-huh,
yeah,
uh-huh.
right. I remember this.
And so there was a part of me that was like, oh shit, and also oh good, because we know what we know. But then of course there's also the South Node in Libra that's like, oh good, I get to keep on focusing on relationship, right? And so it's like, no, Marie, not from there. Right?
Well, one of the cool things that I liked about the evolutionary astrology online conference that we just had, and I sat with in Lauren Albandian. She had a whole talk on squares to the nodes, and other people, like it's a popular topic, of course. But and I can't remember if it was Laura or someone else, but it's nice to go for full circle back to Laura here.
Yeah, right.
um, but it was kind of this whole thing of like I I think I opposed a question something like about, like the planet squaring, was the planet square the nodes show the kind of like the reason or motive why the soul kind of departs the south node and decides to go to the north node.
Mm,
And there wasn't like a, yeah, that's the motive or reason why the skip step created. And there was kind of also this larger sense of like, it doesn't really matter like how we start kind of going back and forth between the polarities. And that, I think this is the key too, is that it's completely natural and there's nothing wrong with it. Like there's nothing like, oh, you have a skip step. Like there's no shame in a skipped step. Like it's a totally natural
mm,
phenomena that just
mm,
simply happens where
mm,
as a
mm,
soul we kind of dive headlong into an opposite identity that we start evolving, but we
mm.
haven't fully finished integrating this other thing. Like there's no like,
Right.
it's just like, so what.
Right, right. Okay.
um but having said that, if you see a chart that say has, Pluto down to the degree square the nodes, it's kind of can be psychologically torturous at that point, and the soul does want to resolve the dynamic.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, I mean, this
That
is a
makes sense.
whole,
Sure,
I don't want to go
sure.
down the rabbit hole, but that's
Yep.
like the
Great. Okay.
the short of
Okay.
the long.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I love that. I mean, I feel like every time you've spoke about evolutionary astrology, I've felt like it's not a judgmental, it's not coming from a judgmental place just because it's looking at something more evolved or less evolved even, or like you're saying, I appreciate you bringing that up in the realm of the skip step dynamic, right? I think it's really just from that innate desire to grow um and to evolve as a human that we end up almost sometimes having the shame, because we're like, oh no, I don't want to do that, I don't want to side, I don't want to, I don't want to backstep, I don't want to, I want to do my best to arrive and be able to have the awareness to learn as much as possible in this lifetime without having to overly burden myself or others next time around or later in this life or what have you, right? And so and so you know, and I know it does tend to be the ego that ends up creating the shame or what
Like
have you,
take care
but
of our own stuff,
that's
our own
it.
deal with our own baggage, kind of like,
Seriously,
so we're not
seriously.
putting it on someone else.
That it's all we can do, right? Or attempt to do,
Right. I love
right?
that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
It's a great goal. And
It's a great goal. I'm not saying that I've been able to do it this time.
right. I mean, we're
I'm sure there's some stuff I
hopefully
created already that is going to come back around at some point. Blessings, right? Oops. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um one question before we wrap up is
Mm-hmm.
are you open to people reaching out to you if anybody would like, hey, I want to, are you doing readings? Are you like, what's
Yeah.
your availability and contact?
Oh,
And
great. Thanks. Yeah, I do. Um, I am a little bit available for readings. Yep. And I would say the easiest way at this point, because my website, my scheduling website is not open at this moment. It will be within the next couple of weeks again.
oh,
Um, so I'll tell you that, but an easier way would be to email me. My website, which is just a scheduling site, is www.mariepoland.com.
okay.
That's Poland with one L, like the country.
Mhm.
And then my email is heartfirepurpose@gmail.com.
Nice. And if anyone's inspired outside of a reading, even are they well, as
Oh,
far as
yeah.
your other work and if they're curious that they can get a hold of you?
Definitely, definitely.
Okay.
Yes, yes, I would love that. And in fact, once I launch the other project that I made a little foreshadowing about, I will put that on my website. It's not just going to be an astrology scheduling site, which is primarily what it's been, but instead it will introduce the
Mm.
other project that I'm actually going to be available for.
Great. Well, maybe we can have you back on the podcast sometime in the future,
I
and
would love that.
continue these conversations and explore what you're up to in the future. Uh,
Thank you, Bradley.
yeah.
Thank you for being such a wonderful, gracious host. And I'm so grateful to be friends and allies with you and on this astrological journey
Yeah.
together. Thank you.
Likewise.
Really.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you. Yay.
Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, I hope that you are well in your heart, body, mind, and soul.